This is Death by Hibiscus Bush, a hilarious feel-good cozy mystery, Island Whodunnit Book 2. Written by Tess Marlowe and narrated by Sarah Smith. Chapter 1. Bombay's ears perked before Alex even heard the rustle. She was elbow-deep in a pair of gardening gloves, trying to wrestle a stubborn hibiscus bush into behaving. Reg was somewhere behind the house, arguing with the ancient garden hose like it owed him money. And then Bombay growled, not his playful chase the gecko growl, not his I found a dead crab again growl. This one was low, deliberate, focused. Alex yanked off a glove.
Bombay?
He was staring toward the crumbling garden wall of the abandoned villa across the street, the one with the boarded-up windows, faded bougainvillea choking the trellis, and a for sale, price reduced sign that had been there since Elvis was alive. Bombay barked once, then took off.
Reg!
Alex shouted, already moving.
The dog's gone full lassie again.
She rounded the hedge just in time to see Bombay disappear through a hole in the stone wall. Reg jogged over, soaked from the knees down.
He find a turtle orgy again?
I think it's worse.
By the time Alex reached the overgrown garden, Bombay was already mid-dig.
No!
She yelled.
That's not your personal sandbox.
The villa loomed ahead like an abandoned set from a telenovela. Stucco cracked, shutters dangling like broken limbs, fountain dry and filled with beer cans and leaves. Bombay was standing absolutely still near an overgrown hibiscus bush. Alex slowed.
What is it, boy?
Reg squinted.
Please don't let it be another buried cooler full of rum.
They stepped closer. That's when they saw it. They stopped cold as Bombay let out a low growl and stepped back. A patch of dirt had been freshly turned, not weeks ago, not even days. The soil was damp. The air smelled wrong. Reg squinted.
That's a fresh grave.
Alex swallowed.
It's also in the shape of a body.
A disturbed patch of earth. Uneven. Shallow. A corner of old fabric poked through the soil. Bright pink and floral.
Alex.
She crouched and gently brushed aside the dirt. It gave too easily. And then, oh hell, there was a hand. Wrinkled. Pale. Nails painted coral pink, chipped and clotted with soil. Alex stood up too fast.
That's a body.
Reg didn't blink.
Yep.
They both turned to look at Bombay, who wagged once and promptly sat. Alex exhaled.
Okay, well, there goes our quiet morning.
The new island police team arrived fast. Word of a fresh body did that. Detective Angela Mendoza, dispatched from the mainland after Rudy and Martina's quiet exit in handcuffs, stepped out of her SUV looking like she was prepared to solve 3 murders before lunch.
Let me guess,
She said, pulling on gloves.
your dog found this?
Old habits die hard.
Alex replied.
We keep telling him he's of the job, but he still wants to freelance.
Mendoza crouched near the grave as the forensic techs moved in.
We'll need to ID her, but from the looks of it, this wasn't a long-planned burial. She's been dead for less than a day.
Reg scanned the wild hedges and broken planters.
Who buries a body in a front garden?
Someone who's in a hurry.
Any idea who she could be?
Too early. But the clothes are old-fashioned. Nightgown, house slippers, no signs of a struggle.
One of the techs waved her over and pointed at the back garden gate.
They dragged it from here.
Mendoza nodded, then turned back to Alex and Reg.
Either of you know who lived here last?
Alex shook her head.
An old lady, Austrian, I think, or Belgian. People always get it mixed up. We were told she moved back to Europe years ago.
Reg nodded.
Austrian, I think. We've been here for 6 months now. That villa's never had a tenant.
Mendoza frowned.
We'll check the property records. Do me a favor, if you hear anything.
We'll pass it along.
Mendoza looked thoughtful.
You two have a knack for being near bodies.
It's a gift.
Bombay barked once, wagged, then went back to sniffing the flower beds. By mid-afternoon, word had spread faster than free rum at a beach wedding. Alex and Reg sat on their porch, Bombay snoozing at their feet, while curious neighbors strolled past in a slow, not-so-subtle parade of interest.
You think someone really thought they could get away with burying her in a garden?
Reg sat down.
Either someone panicked, or they figured no one cared.
Alex tapped her pen.
And you believe that?
Nope.
Just then, a golf cart screeched to a halt outside their gate. A voice bellowed,
"Y'all hear about the murder? Or do you only know when you find the body yourselves?"
Gary got off and marched toward them, shirtless, sunburned, and righteous, Polly the parrot clinging to his shoulder like a drunken mascot. He planted his flip-flops on their front step like he was delivering a declaration of war.
"I knew she never left. The government wanted her silenced.
Alex sighed.
Hi, Gary.
She was a spy,
He said, jabbing a finger at the villa.
Cold War sleeper agent. The Austrians faked her departure, but she didn't go back to Europe. She was taken, interrogated, probably reprogrammed."
Polly squawked.
Brainwashed!
Reg rubbed his temples.
Have you been mixing the bug spray with your rum again?
"I'm telling you, she was taken by the CIA.
Gary,
Alex said patiently.
what was her name?
Madam Banter, or something like that. Always wore crazy muumuus. Had one of those little dogs that looked like a mop.
That could be literally anyone.
Reg muttered.
She played the piano, terribly. Used to hear her late at night. Or maybe it was a signal."
Alex sighed.
Thank you for the intel.
Polly knows.
Gary said, tapping the parrot's beak.
Polly saw her walking the garden last night.
That would have been after she died.
Polly chirped.
Zombie lady!
Alex turned to Reg.
We need better sources.
That evening, Mendoza stopped by with an update.
Preliminary ID. Her name was Elfrieda Bauer, 86, Austrian national. She did own the villa, and until now, all her utilities and banking activity looks normal.
Which means someone was keeping up appearances.
Mendoza nodded.
We're looking into her accounts. Neighbors say they hadn't seen her in years, but no one thought much of it. Automatic payments, someone collected the mail.
Any relatives?
We're looking into that too. And the property records. But if your dog smells anything else, please call me before you dig.
Reg leaned on the railing.
Guess the island's Labrador shortage wasn't the only crime we had going.
Welcome back to chaos. Don't unpack your beach towels yet.
As she left, Bombay sat up and barked once toward the villa. Alex raised an eyebrow.
You want a metal detective?
Bombay wagged, then flopped back down like a satisfied retiree. Chapter 2. By next morning, the villa across the street looked like a crime scene from a tourism board's worst nightmare. Yellow tape flapped in the breeze, 2 patrol cars blocked the driveway, and Detective Mendoza paced out front in mirrored sunglasses, talking into a radio like she was coordinating a military op. Alex sipped her coffee and watched from the porch.
Looks like they've torn the place apart.
Reg joined her, Bombay at his heels, tail swishing happily like he was hoping someone needed another body sniffed out before breakfast.
They haven't carried anything out. No boxes. No evidence bags.
No valuables either. I don't see a single piece of art or furniture worth sweating over.
As if on cue, Mendoza jogged across the street, clipboard in hand.
Morning.
She said, pulling off her sunglasses.
I need help. Again.
We accept payment in dinners and gossip.
Alex replied. Mendoza gave a tired smile.
We swept the house. There's nothing left of value. No jewelry, no money. Not even the stuff you'd expect from an old woman who owned the place for 40 years.
Reg raised a brow.
You think it was looted before she died?
I think it was looted long before we found the body. Her wardrobe's half empty. Paintings taken off the walls. Closet safe is wide open.
So, not a panicked heist? It was planned?
Exactly, and I'd bet my bad she didn't do the packing herself.
Reg crossed his arms.
Whoever was helping her, gardener, cleaner, friend, could have slowly stripped the place over time.
Mendoza nodded.
That's where I need you. Locals talk to you. They still see me as the outsider who replaced their crooked sheriff.
Technically, we helped remove him, but fair.
I need to know who she trusted. Did she have any close friends in the complex? Regular help? Was she seen walking alone? Was she even seen at all these past few years?
Leave it to us. We've got nosy neighbors on speed dial.
Take Bombay with you. He's got more credibility than I do right now.
Bombay woofed, accepting the promotion. They started with the usual suspects. Ms. Belvedere, resident botanist and reigning queen of Isla Lirio's gossip circuit, was on her second mimosa when they knocked.
"Darlings,"
she said, sweeping the door open in a cloud of lavender perfume and caftan silk.
"come in. The jungle cats haven't eaten me yet."
We just wanted to ask a few things about the woman across the street.
Ms. Belvedere tisked.
"So sad. I always said she'd go out in drama."
You knew her?
"Oh, not personally, but you hear things. Elfrida Bauer lived in that villa since the 80s, I think. Rarely social. Wore all this bright colors, very particular about her hedges. Bit of a recluse, but I heard she used to be something grand. Museum curator or a pianist."
Reg leaned on the doorframe.
When was the last time anyone saw her?
Ms. Belvedere wrinkled her nose.
"Oh, goodness, years. 4, maybe 5. But I heard her son came and took her home. She was losing her memory. Getting strange."
Did you actually see him?
"No,"
she said, frowning slightly.
"but someone told someone who told me. You know how it goes."
Who maintained the property before she left?
There was a gardener, tall, wore one of those ridiculous hats, came and went, never spoke, a bit sullen.
Alex and Reg exchanged a look.
Did you ever see him after Ms. Bauer was gone?
"Oh, once or twice, but I assumed he was working for someone else."
Alex nodded.
Thank you, Miss Belvedere.
The woman leaned forward conspiratorially.
"You think someone killed her, don't you?"
Reg raised an eyebrow.
Why would you say that?
Ms. Belvedere gave them a sharp smile.
"Because no one just goes missing from this island. We talk too much."
Their next stop was the Klein cottage, half coral stucco, half gaudy wind chimes, and 100% kitsch. Howard Howie Klein answered the door in a sequined robe that might have once belonged to Liberace's understudy.
"Darlings,
He said, flourishing his hands like he'd just made a dove disappear.
to what do I owe the pleasure this early? It's barely 10. The spirits are still sleeping."
We're looking into Elfrida Bauer, the woman found in the villa across from us.
Howie clutched his robe and gasped dramatically.
"She's dead? Good heavens. And here I thought I saw her at the grocery store just last month, pushing a cart like a woman on a mission. House slippers, hair in a net, muttering about pickles in German."
Reg squinted.
You sure it wasn't someone else?
"I never forget a woman in house shoes.
Howie declared.
She had that same little hunch in her shoulders like she was always cold or disappointed in someone."
Alex leaned in.
What time of day?
Late night, maybe 10, 11 p.m. I remember because I was there for snacks. The coconut marshmallows, they only restock late at night.
She was shopping alone?
Alone as a moonbeam, but she moved like she knew where things were.
Reg murmured.
Might not have been her.
Howie looked crestfallen.
"You think I saw a ghost?"
You think ghosts fancy pickles?
"I don't know.
Howie flailed.
Ghosts are not part of my act."
2 streets down, Maritza Pena was hovering over her impressive collection of orchids, trimming the dead leaves with surgical precision and visible distrust. She was the kind of retired nurse who could still silence a room with a single mm-hmm.
"Come to ask about the dead woman,"
she said flatly, not looking up.
Yes. Did you know her at all?
"Didn't need to. She had a nurse of her own. That mailbox never overflowed. Not once. Someone was collecting it."
Reg frowned.
You're sure?
"I used to live in Unit A7. Walked by that place every morning. No newspapers piling up. No trash left out. Lights in the back room sometimes, flickering after midnight. Even after she left."
Alex exchanged a look with Reg.
Was it her?
Maybe, but if it was, she got real spry in her old age. I saw a shadow once, moving fast, too fast for an 80-something with memory problems.
Could it have been the gardener?
That man didn't move fast. I've seen iguanas with more pep. No, this was someone else. Younger, taller.
Alex nodded.
Thank you, Maritza.
Maritza dusted off her hands.
You ask me, someone was still living there long after she left.
By lunchtime, Reg and Alex had retreated to their porch, a notebook between them, Bombay snoring under the table.
Well,
Reg said, flipping through his notes.
we've got a slow gardener, a son who presumably took her to Austria, a maybe ghost at the grocery store, and a nurse who thinks someone was living there secretly.
Alex stirred her iced tea.
All signs point to someone keeping up appearances long after Elfrida stopped showing up.
Reg tapped the page.
Looks like it.
Bombay grunted in his sleep and let out a long, suspiciously well-timed snore. Chapter 3.
So let me get this straight.
Mendoza drained her Stanley cup.
The woman lived across the street for decades and not one person, not one, actually saw her pack a suitcase and leave?
Reg leaned back in the rattan chair on their porch, Bombay curled at his feet like a retired secret agent.
Seems like it.
The gossip was not very helpful, sorry for that.
Well,
Mendoza said, pulling a folded page from her back pocket.
I've got something. Took some digging and a favor from a friend on the mainland. Elfrida Bauer had relatives. They've been contacted.
Plural?
Reg raised a brow.
3, maybe 4. One from Toronto, one from Germany, one from Iceland. Or maybe Ibiza? It was a garbled message.
Alex grinned.
Ah, the chaos of probate. Just when you think murder is your biggest headache.
Officially,
Mendoza said, sharp as ever.
We don't have confirmation of foul play yet.
Reg lifted his beer.
Lady's buried in her garden under 2 feet of fresh dirt.
With no jewelry, no cash, and no art left inside the villa. Smells like red snapper left in the sun.
Mendoza stood.
We still have to wait for the coroner's ruling. The relatives should be arriving in the next couple of hours. If you two feel like being nosy.
We're not nosy,
Alex interrupted.
We're helpful,
Reg added, nodding solemnly. Mendoza gave them a flat look and headed for the street.
Just don't scare them off before I do the official questioning.
2 hours later, the island's beleaguered taxi van wheezed to a stop outside the cracked gates of the villa. Out stepped the heirs. First came a man who looked like he ironed his socks. Crisp linen suit, wireframe glasses, and the expression of someone who hadn't smiled since the Berlin Wall fell.
Fritz Bauer.
He said without offering a handshake.
I'm Elfrida's nephew. Is there a probate officer here?
Just Officer Mendoza.
Alex said, slipping into a smile.
And we're neighbors.
Fritz looked them up and down like they were part of the landscaping.
I was told the villa was intact.
It is, if you count dead lawns, and missing Monet prints is intact.
Fritz huffed and moved on. Behind him, a swirl of scarves and bangles emerged from the van. Astrid Bauer, in her 60s, hair like a cloud of white candy floss, wrists jangling with bracelets. She looked like she'd been airlifted straight from a forest retreat that smelled of sage and patchouli.
Elfrida and I were soul sisters,
she declared, pressing both hands to her heart.
She told me she wanted her ashes spread in the garden among the hibiscus.
She's already halfway there,
Reg muttered. Astrid wandered toward the broken garden gate, eyes misty. Next came Clive. Shirtless under an open floral button-down, GoPro strapped to his chest, and dual-wielding phones.
Yo! Clive Rogers. Great-nephew, I think? We called her Oma. I was going to pitch her on turning this place into an NFT co-working haven, but, bad timing.
Alex stared.
I beg your pardon?
Property values are up. Views insane, and old-world charm is hot with crypto folk. I even minted an Elfrida commemorative token last night.
He held out a phone.
Only 2 bids so far. Sad.
Reg squinted.
Do NFTs come with ghosts now, or is that extra?
Clive paused and suddenly looked very sad.
She once sent me a sock full of Mozart chocolates. I kept it. Didn't know I'd miss her until yesterday. Why did I remember it now? Weird.
Before Alex could respond, the sharp clack of heeled sandals echoed on the sidewalk. A woman in black approached, mantilla-style shawl over her dark hair, large sunglasses hiding her eyes. She carried a single rose.
I am Marta,
she said softly.
I took care of Senora Bauer. She was delicate in her last years.
Mendoza emerged from the villa.
You weren't on any employee records.
I was hired privately. I respected her. She didn't want contact with the outside world. Said the past was dead.
Astrid gasped.
You were her nurse? I never heard of you.
I did my best to give her space.
Fritz sniffed.
That sounds suspicious.
Marta didn't flinch.
She wanted peace.
Alex watched her carefully. Something in the woman's accent felt off, almost like she was mimicking a Spanish lilt. And her shoes, Italian leather, brand new, odd for a housekeeper from a crumbling villa. Inside the villa, the air was heavy with mildew. Dust sheets clung to furniture like shrouds. Faint rectangles marked where paintings had once hung. A single overturned teacup sat on the parlor mantel.
No valuables anywhere.
Mendoza murmured to Alex and Reg.
No cash, no checkbooks, but all her bills were paid on time. Someone had access to her bank account.
Fritz examined a sideboard.
I was supposed to inherit the war-era silverware set. It's gone.
Astrid sniffed a curtain.
It smells like betrayal.
Clive was already filming a TikTok dance in the garden.
#haunted inheritance.
Alex tugged Reg's sleeve.
I need a drink.
They regrouped at Bongos. Mendoza stayed behind to question Marta. The rest huddled around two pushed-together tables like a dysfunctional brunch party. Bombay flopped underneath, belly to the breeze.
So,
Reg said, cracking open a beer.
Let's talk about the last time you saw Elfrida.
Fritz adjusted his collar.
We spoke monthly. She kept things brief.
What did she say last time?
Alex asked.
She said the bougainvillea were unruly, and the gardener was driving her mad.
Astrid sighed.
I wrote her dozens of letters, never heard back, but I knew she read them. I felt it.
Reg glanced at Clive.
And you emailed her?
Yeah, to her Yahoo account. But my messages disappeared. Thought maybe she blocked me, but now I wonder. Maybe someone else was reading them.
Or deleting them.
Clive paled slightly.
I told you she never left.
A voice called from the bar. Everyone turned. Gary stood barefoot, one sandal stuffed in his cargo shorts, Polly the parrot perched on his shoulder.
Your granny was a sleeper spy. That graves a message.
Reg groaned.
Not now, Gary.
She told me in '93 that the Cold War never ended. Said they were watching her garden.
Alex leaned in to Reg and whispered,
Honestly, he might not be wrong.
The parrot squawked.
Trust no one!
Clive dropped his phone. Chapter 4. Reg and Alex left the family to reacquaint and went back to the villa. Marta sat on the edge of a faded chaise lounge inside, her posture straight, hands folded tightly in her lap. She looked like someone who had come prepared to grieve, but ended up in an interrogation instead. Mendoza stood nearby, notepad in hand. She didn't look aggressive, just quietly alert, like a bloodhound with better posture. Reg leaned against the wall, arms crossed. Alex sat on the arm of an old settee. Bombay sprawled beneath her, snoring softly.
You're saying you were her caregiver?
Mendoza began.
Privately hired, cash only.
Yes, she didn't want records.
Convenient,
Reg muttered. Alex shot him a look. Marta continued, her voice soft but unwavering.
I cared for Senora Bauer for nearly 6 years. She was slipping. Her memory, I mean. Some days she thought it was 1984. Other days she called me Astrid, which was her cousin's name, I believe.
And then?
Mendoza asked.
4 years ago, I came back from my regular Sunday off and found the house empty. No Elfrida. No suitcases. Just a note.
Mendoza perked up.
A note?
Marta reached into her bag and pulled out a wrinkled, yellowed piece of stationery. She unfolded it delicately, like it might disintegrate under the wrong gaze.
She said she was going back to Austria,
Marta explained.
that she appreciated my help. There was a check enclosed for $5,000.
Mendoza took the letter with gloved hands.
May I?
Of course.
Alex craned her neck to see. The handwriting was neat, overly formal. Something about it felt impersonal, like it had been copied from a template for breakup letters or retirement speeches. Reg stepped closer.
She just left? On her own?
That's what the letter said.
Marta's voice dropped to a whisper.
But that's the thing. She couldn't have. Elfrida barely remembered how to use a phone. She'd stopped writing checks a year before that. I was doing everything. Bills, groceries, appointments.
So someone else wrote this,
Mendoza said.
I didn't want to believe that.
Marta's hands clenched.
I thought maybe she had a moment of clarity, or maybe her family finally convinced her to go home.
Did you reach out to them?
Alex asked.
No, I didn't know how. She never gave me contact information. She told me her family was a pack of wolves and she wanted nothing to do with them.
Reg nodded.
That tracks.
I left the key under the planter by the front steps and never came back until today.
They all sat in silence for a beat, digesting that. Then Mendoza said,
Let's go find that key.
Marta led the way and pointed to the teal planter.
That one. It was our secret place.
Mendoza crouched near the cracked steps and lifted it. Dust billowed up. Beneath it was a single brass key.
4 years,
Reg said, shaking his head.
and no one moved this.
Mendoza plucked it up, turned it in her hand, then marched to the front door. She inserted the key into the lock and twisted. Nothing.
It doesn't fit?
Alex asked. Mendoza shook her head.
Lock's been changed.
Well, that's not suspicious at all.
Mendoza stared at the key, then the lock.
So someone else came back after Marta left and didn't want anyone else getting in.
Squatter?
Or someone who wanted the place to stay empty.
They turned to look back at the villa. The pastel paint was peeling in sheets. The windows were all intact, though the curtains behind them were sun-faded. Alex felt like the house itself was listening. Back inside, the trio reconvened with the heirs, who got back from the bongos tipsy and a bit less chaotic. Mendoza held up the letter.
Marta says Elfrida left for Austria 4 years ago. Does that line up with anything she told you?
Fritz sniffed.
Elfrida never mentioned moving, but it was around that time when she started to sound confused. Told me the mailman was stealing her vegetables.
Astrid frowned.
I sent her a solstice box last June, sage bundles, tarot cards, some pressed lavender. She emailed a thank you, said the lavender reminded her of the Alps.
Clive looked up from his phone.
I tagged her in a throwback photo like a month ago, and she liked it. Unless someone else had her Instagram password.
Everyone turned to look at him.
What? I'm just saying.
Interesting,
Mendoza said slowly. Alex leaned forward.
So none of you were told she was leaving the island?
All three shook their heads.
She never would have gone back to Austria. She always said the air here was better for her asthma, and that she hated the snow.
She hated a lot of things.
Fritz added.
And people.
I hate that NFT boy is making more sense than anyone else.
Reg whispered to Alex.
Me too,
she muttered. Mendoza stood.
I'm going to ask Marta a few more questions.
She stepped outside, leaving the rest of them in the cavernous living room.
So,
Alex said brightly,
did any of you visit in person in the last few years?
No, we assumed she wanted her space.
I was planning a spiritual retreat and thought about stopping by,
Astrid said.
but Mercury was in retrograde and it didn't feel right.
Clive shrugged.
I almost came down to do drone footage of the house for an island promo project, but I got dengue in Bali.
Reg blinked.
So basically, she could have vanished years ago and none of you would have noticed?
Fritz bristled.
That's an unfair characterization.
Astrid looked genuinely distressed.
We all loved her in our own way. She was complicated.
Oma was cookie a bit,
Clive added. Mendoza returned, dusting her hands off.
Marta's sticking to her story. She gave me the contacts of her new employer, so I doubt she's hiding anything.
So she probably didn't kill anyone. Or at least she's very organized about it.
Alex turned to Mendoza.
If the locks were changed and someone had access to her accounts, we're talking about premeditated fraud, possibly worse.
And no official missing person report.
Mendoza said grimly.
Because everyone assumed she left voluntarily.
And the only witness to her disappearance was paid off with a bonus.
They all stood there in the echoey stillness of the villa. Outside, parrots squawked in the trees. Bombay let out a dream bark.
Well,
Alex said, straightening.
Either someone kidnapped her and staged a farewell letter, or she's really been chilling in the Austrian Alps, sipping schnapps for the last 4 years and came back to die.
I'd bet on the first,
Reg muttered. They were interrupted by a loud crash from upstairs. Everyone turned.
What was that?
Mendoza said.
Ghost,
Clive offered.
I think the chandelier finally gave up,
Astrid said mournfully. Fritz rolled his eyes.
Can we have a real estate agent assess the structure before the roof caves in?
Mendoza waved everyone toward the door.
Out, all of you. I need to finish this sweep alone.
Reluctantly, they shuffled out. Outside, the group scattered. Clive went to update his followers. Possible murder, stay tuned. Fritz dialed a lawyer, and Astrid sat cross-legged on the lawn and began humming. Marta lingered near the gate. She looked at Alex, then Reg.
I hope you find out what happened,
she said quietly.
She was difficult, but she deserved better.
Reg gave a small nod.
We'll do what we can.
As Marta walked away down the hill, Alex turned to Reg.
What now?
Reg stretched his back.
We need drinks.
We always need drinks, but this time I'll make it a double.
As they walked back toward their cottage, Bombay pranced ahead, nose in the air.
Think he smells a conspiracy?
Reg asked.
He's a retired K9, not a psychic.
Bombay turned and sneezed dramatically. Alex smirked.
Okay, maybe a little psychic.
Chapter 5. The sun had barely cleared the palms when Mendoza strode up to the porch, a folder under her arm and a grim set to her jaw.
Morning,
Alex called, sliding a second coffee across the table.
You look like someone who's about to ruin our sense of closure.
I might,
Mendoza said, dropping into a chair. She opened the folder.
Coroner's report came in.
Reg raised a brow.
And?
Elfrida Bauer died of natural causes. Heart failure, advanced age, no foul play.
Well, that's a relief, except for the part where she was buried in her own garden like a potato.
Exactly, and meanwhile, her bank account kept paying bills, sending monthly donations to some German Shepherd Rescue Fund, and get this, ordering cheese of the month boxes.
Reg blinked.
Cheese?
Mendoza turned the screen toward them.
Brilliant Box Club. No one questioned a 90-year-old's obsession with imported camembert. A different variety each month. Tracked to this address until 3 months ago, when the company went out of business. Who makes that up?
Alex squinted.
Someone should have picked it up. We never saw any cheese.
Reg stared dreamily into the horizon.
I wouldn't mind some free cheese.
Alex rolled her eyes. Mendoza nodded.
I pulled a few email logs, too. Her Yahoo account was sending out emails and holiday e-cards and reading the junk promo letters all the way up until the day of her death.
Reg frowned.
But we didn't find any phone, or computer, or tablet. You'd think someone that into emails would leave at least one device behind.
I've put in a request for a tech expert from the mainland. They're sending someone over this afternoon, probably a junior.
Reg stood.
What's the bet it's someone who says hashtag IRL out loud?
Alex smirked.
Don't try sounding modern, old man.
The ferry wheezed in an hour later, belching out a single passenger, a short, excitable 20-something in mismatched socks, a cargo vest, and a backpack twice his size. His name tag said, Lucian Carter Intern, Digital Forensics.
I brought my own hotspot and 3 kinds of screwdrivers,
he announced cheerfully, tripping on the dock, arms windmilling as he nearly took out a sleeping pelican and apologized to both the bird and the nearest bench. Reg muttered,
We're in safe hands now.
Lucien adjusted his glasses, which immediately slid down again.
So, I understand we've got a ghost grandma sending donations from beyond the grave?
Mendoza pointed toward the golf cart.
Get in, tech wizard.
Back at the villa, Lucien unpacked a bewildering array of tools onto the dusty living room floor, a laptop, signal scanner, thermal wand, what looked suspiciously like a baby monitor, and a bag of sour gummy worms.
First things first,
He said, shoving 2 worms into his mouth.
let's check for signal ghosts.
Is that a technical term?
Alex asked.
No, I just think it sounds cool.
He began scanning the house with the wand. It beeped faintly in the front parlor, then again by the old secretary desk. The dust hadn't been disturbed in years. Mendoza crossed her arms.
Nothing was here when we searched.
Right, but
Lucien pulled out a second device, this one with blinking blue lights.
Wi-Fi ping was active from this house's router as recently as 48 hours ago. Network name was House of Hibiscus. Clever, huh?
Whoever took the devices probably cleaned out after she died. And before we got here.
Reg grimaced.
Clever or creepy?
Alex knelt by the desk.
What about the IP logs?
Lucien tapped rapidly on his laptop.
All pings and email logins were consistent with this address, down to a few feet. No VPNs, no spoofing. That Yahoo account was being accessed from inside this house.
But there's no modem,
Mendoza said. Lucien raised a brow.
Exactly, which means someone removed the tech recently, but left behind the trail.
Any backups? Cloud storage?
He nodded.
Already pulling down the Yahoo metadata. Give me a few hours and I'll have timestamps, locations, maybe even message drafts.
Can you tell if it was her?
Mendoza asked. Lucien hesitated.
That's trickier. I can check for writing patterns, grammar, use of emoji.
Emoji analysis?
Reg asked, deadpan.
Absolutely.
Lucien said proudly.
Old people never use the crying, laughing face correctly.
While Lucien tapped away, Mendoza pulled Alex and Reg aside.
If someone was impersonating her, they were doing a good job. Bills, emails, even donations were on brand. But where was Ms. Bauer herself all this time?
Alex chewed her lip.
It can't have been in the villa all along. We would have seen something.
Reg nodded.
Or heard.
What if the kidnappers kept her elsewhere and when she died, didn't come up with a better idea than to bury her here?
And clean the place out in the process.
Alex added. Mendoza glanced at the old secretary desk again.
We should search this place again. Thoroughly. Secret compartments, floorboards, attic.
Reg stretched.
Dibs on not doing the attic.
Chapter 6. The wind had picked up by midday, rustling through the hibiscus hedges as Mendoza, Alex, Reg, and Lucien fanned out through Ms. Bauer's villa, each carrying a flashlight and wildly different levels of optimism.
I call this end of the house.
Lucien declared, snapping on a headlamp that immediately blinded Reg.
Look for anything glowing.
Reg shielded his eyes.
Son, the only thing glowing in there is your enthusiasm.
Alex was already on her knees in the front parlor, tapping the floorboards beside the secretary desk.
Secret compartments, trapdoors, false bottoms. Come on, give me something.
Mendoza rummaged through the closets again, pulling up carpets, running her fingers along baseboards.
This place is too clean. Like someone came through with a checklist and a conscience.
Reg wandered into the guest room and knocked on the walls with the side of his fist.
If I fall through something, I expect a rescue.
We'll send Bombay. With a sandwich.
The German shepherd wagged his tail from his post near the kitchen, where he'd discovered the sweet spot with the best breeze and 0 creaking floorboards. 2 hours and 1 mildly stubbed toe later, the team reconvened in the front room, covered in dust, with a newfound collection of bent coat hangers and precisely no clues. Lucienne collapsed onto a wicker chair.
I got zip. Nada. Less than nada. If there was a secret lair in here, it's either gone, microscopic, or cloaked by alien tech.
Mendoza rubbed the back of her neck.
Same. Whoever cleared this place out knew what they were doing.
Maybe too well.
Alex murmured, eyeing the pristine bookshelves.
Not even a single forgotten knickknack? No family photos? No half-used lotion?
And no cheese in the fridge,
Reg said grimly. Mendoza blew out a breath.
All right, I'm heading to the management office. Maybe we missed something bigger, like a crawl space or a sealed-off pantry of doom. We need the blueprints.
That's a solid idea, Detective.
Alex said, rising.
Maybe there's a hidden wine cellar with Riesling we couldn't find.
The island's property management office was a modest mint stucco building with a faded sign and a tiny fan that did more humming than cooling. Mendoza leaned over the counter, flashing her badge at the receptionist, who looked like she'd been laminated in SPF 100 at least for a decade.
I need blueprints for Villa 12A and any adjoining properties under the same owner.
The woman squinted.
12A? That's the old Austrian lady's place, right?
That's the one.
With a sigh and a cracked knuckle flourish, the receptionist disappeared into the back room. Shuffling noises, a dropped file, and a muttered curse preceded her return. She slapped a folder on the counter.
Here, you're not gonna like it.
Mendoza opened the folder. Her eyes narrowed. There, tucked between the crisp schematics for the main villa, was a second listing. A property attached to the same account, Ms. Elfrida Bauer, but not part of the primary floor plan. A separate unit, 34D. No one had mentioned it.
Cozy,
Reg muttered, eyeing the narrow path that snaked behind a bougainvillea hedge at the far edge of the complex. Alex pushed aside a cluster of vines, revealing a squat stucco unit with a rusted iron number plate, 34D. The door looked recently wiped down. The windows were shut, the curtains drawn. Bombay sniffed excitedly around the doorstep, tail up like a periscope. Mendoza jiggled the handle and shrugged.
Locked?
Step back,
Reg said, rolling his shoulders.
You're not kicking it in, Colonel O'Malley. The island doesn't have money to reimburse the repairs,
Mendoza warned.
Course not. I'm shoulder checking it. Far more civilized.
Wait,
Lucien piped up.
Try this.
He pulled a thin tool from his cargo vest and popped the door open in 3 seconds flat. Reg blinked.
Where were you during my last divorce?
Lucien opened his mouth, but Alex beat him to it with a squint aimed at Reg.
Are you planning on having a next one?
Inside, the air was cool and faintly musty, the kind of stillness that spoke of recent departure rather than abandonment. A half-burned candle sat on the windowsill. The tiny kitchenette held a single plate drying in the rack. The bed was neatly made, the pillow slightly indented. Someone had been living here, recently, and whoever it was had left in a hurry. Mendoza moved through the space slowly, eyes sharp.
No dust. This place was cleaned. Not long ago.
Alex crouched by the bed and opened the drawer. Inside was a worn paperback in German, a half-used notepad, and a single earring. Cheap costume jewelry shaped like a daisy.
Look at this,
Reg said, lifting a familiar canvas from behind a low dresser.
I saw this in one of the photos of the main house.
It was one of Elfrida's landscapes, gentle pastels of the island shoreline, signed with her elegant scrawl. Lucien hovered near a table cluttered with old newspapers and crossword puzzles. Everyone filled out completely wrong.
Whoever lived here had time to be bored and liked peach tea.
He held up a canister.
This could have been a hideaway.
Mendoza said slowly.
If she wasn't at the main house, maybe they kept her here.
Alex frowned.
But why keep the main house active? For the bank transactions? The deliveries?
To make it look like she was still living there.
Reg guessed.
Meanwhile, they hid her here. Smaller footprint, fewer eyes.
Alex's voice dropped.
And when she died, they panicked. Moved her body, tried to erase this place.
But not well enough. They missed the fact that this unit was still in her name.
Someone buried her like they were trying to cover their own guilt. Not like a stranger, like someone who knew her.
Lucien wandered into the closet and reemerged waving a few racks of migraine-inducing bright muumuus.
Judging by the retina melting florals, I'd say this was definitely Ms. Bauer's style.
Reg turned slowly.
So either someone loved her style so much they stole all her wardrobe, or Elfrida was held here.
Mendoza's expression hardened.
We need prints. And a list of everyone who has access to this side of the compound.
Lucien nodded.
I can set up a basic surveillance device if you want to leave the place untouched. See if anyone returns.
Alex scanned the room again.
We should get some photos first. Every inch.
Reg leaned against the doorway, arms folded.
This place gives me the creeps. Feels like we're borrowing a ghost's closet.
Mendoza didn't respond. She moved to the tiny writing desk in the corner, leafing through a drawer filled with old envelopes, addressed to the villa. Each one carefully opened. She held one up.
We need a translator. Most of those are in German.
Alex touched the doorframe.
We also need to figure out who knew about this unit and kept quiet. Because that list, it's not long.
Lucien pulled out a mini camera.
I'll start documenting.
Reg stepped outside, glancing up and down the quiet pathway. The unit was hidden by design, tucked just enough out of sight that no casual neighbor would think to knock. But someone knew it was here. Someone who used it. And someone who didn't want it found. Chapter 7. Mendoza was still pacing in front of the newly discovered Bungalow 34D when the forensics team pulled up in a sun-faded van that looked like it doubled as a catering truck. She greeted them with clipped instructions, already pulling on gloves.
Print every surface. Light switches, door handles, fridge magnets, whatever's still warm.
One of the techs raised an eyebrow.
You expecting a fresh batch of ghosts?
I expect sloppy humans.
Alex, Reg, and Lucien stood nearby, sipping lukewarm coffee from Mendoza's emergency thermos. The afternoon heat was already creeping up, heavy and humid, making the air inside the abandoned unit feel thick and stale. Lucien leaned against a post, typing furiously on his tablet.
So far, I've traced 3 IP hits from this address over the last month. Same Yahoo logins, same cheesy e-cards. Whoever was here wasn't just squatting. They were working.
Why stash the valuables here?
Alex asked, arms crossed.
And not at the main house?
Reg shrugged.
Maybe it's like a secret dragon horde. Every villain needs one.
Mendoza poked her head out of the door.
Most of the valuables are reproduction. A few real pieces, mid-century modern, definitely German. No cheese, though.
Tragic.
Reg muttered. Just then, a familiar voice called from the footpath.
Knock, knock. I brought mango muffins.
Shannon rounded the corner in wide-brimmed straw hat and paint-spattered capris, a Tupperware container swinging in her hand like an offering.
Shannon, what are you doing here?
I was heading to the market when I saw your car, and also someone loudly yelling about prints and blood spatters, so naturally, I assumed you two were involved.
Correct assumption.
Shannon handed the muffins to Mendoza, who looked both touched and suspicious.
They're store-bought, but I rearranged them in a nice way, so it counts as baking.
Lucien took one immediately.
This is excellent investigative fuel.
So what's the story?
Shannon asked, glancing toward the bungalow.
Is this where she kept her secret lovers?
We're not ruling anything out,
Reg said solemnly. Mendoza stepped away to speak with the forensic team, giving the trio some space. Shannon took a seat on a nearby bench.
You guys,
she began, eyes gleaming.
The gossip mill is on fire. Miss Bauer is basically a mythological creature now.
Alex chuckled.
Oh no, what are they saying?
Okay, deep breath.
Shannon said, holding up a finger.
According to the ladies at art class, she was secretly a billionaire, had Nazi gold buried under her begonias, and may have been Hitler's love child.
Reg choked on his coffee.
Sorry, what?
Alex asked, blinking. Shannon nodded gravely.
Apparently, that's why she liked watercolors so much. You know, the emotional repression of the medium.
Lucian whispered.
I hate how much that tracks.
And,
Shannon continued, warming up,
some say there was a swastika hanging in her villa, but others say it was just an ugly vintage clock that looked like one from the wrong angle. Either way, they're convinced she was loaded with old money. Blood money. Art class is a war zone right now. Half the ladies think she was a monster, and the other half think she was just very misunderstood and possibly a spy.
Reg leaned back.
Next, you'll tell us she had a twin who ran a schnitzel empire in Paraguay.
Actually,
Shannon said, raising a finger again.
Someone did say she might have had a cousin in Argentina who mysteriously disappeared in the 60s.
Alex pinched the bridge of her nose.
This poor woman.
But here's the thing,
Shannon said, lowering her voice.
Everyone agrees on one point. Ms. Bauer was absurdly generous. She paid better than anyone else on the island, tipped big, gave holiday gifts, the kind of person you wanted to work for.
Lucien nodded.
Nazi guilt,
he said around a mouthful of mango muffin. Alex gave him a look.
Lucien.
Reg leaned forward.
So, let me get this straight. Ms. Bauer had a reputation for being unusually kind to staff, almost too kind, and that made the jobs at her villa competitive?
Shannon raised her eyebrows.
Fiercely, people would fake resumes to try and get in. Gardeners, nurses, housekeepers, everyone wanted in. She apparently once gave a birthday bonus to a guy who only trimmed her hedges twice.
Dare I ask how large this bonus was?
Reg asked.
A Rolex, allegedly.
Lucien's jaw dropped.
I would have trimmed hedges for life.
Reg turned to Alex, eyes narrowing.
Think about it. If she was that sought after, then we've got a new suspect pool. People who wanted to work for her but didn't get hired.
Jealousy?
Alex murmured.
Or desperation. If someone thought they were entitled to her generosity and never got it...
Shannon caught the shift in tone and straightened.
What do you want me to do?
Alex smiled.
Shannon, we love your art class gossip. It's a highly respected community institution. We need names. People who desperately tried to get hired by Ms. Bauer but were never chosen. The kind who grumbled about it. Maybe someone who said they would have done anything for that job.
Oh, I know just who to ask,
Shannon said with a devilish grin.
Sandra Pellet. She used to be a resort concierge and knows everyone who worked hospitality.
Mendoza reappeared, dusting off her hands.
Forensics are lifting prints. Place was definitely cleaned out fast. Some smudged prints, not much to go on.
Alex filled her in.
Shannon just gave us a new angle. People who wanted to work for Ms. Bauer. Ones who might have had motive if they were turned down.
Mendoza's expression sharpened.
That could be the missing piece. Revenge, entitlement, even financial desperation. If someone thought she owed them something...
Lucien nodded.
Could explain why someone kept her alive for so long, to access her finances, and they make it look like she was still sending emails and paying bills so no relatives would show up.
Until she died, and they panicked. Whoever it was, they didn't plan that far.
Mendoza paced a few steps, then stopped.
I'll reach out to the management company. See if there were any applications or complaints related to Ms. Bauer. Staff turnover, maintenance logs, anything.
I'll start a whisper campaign at art class,
Shannon said brightly.
Nothing official, just a few dropped comments during water break.
Use code words like easel envy or Rolex regret.
Alex rolled her eyes.
Let's try not to get Shannon banned from community center again.
That was one time,
Shannon said indignantly.
And technically, Loco started it.
Everyone paused.
I'm not asking,
Mendoza said. Lucien zipped up his bag.
I'm heading back to run handwriting comparisons and emoji frequencies.
Of course you are,
Reg muttered.
Hey,
Lucien called as he turned.
If I find anything fishy, I'll ping your group chat.
Wait, what group chat?
Mendoza asked. Lucien beamed.
Oh, I made one on that super secure Chinese app. It's called Island Sleuth Squad. There's a parrot emoji and everything.
Reg looked mildly horrified.
I don't have Signal.
You do now. I signed you up.
Alex laughed as Mendoza shook her head in resignation. Shannon tucked the now empty muffin container under her arm.
So, should I come by tomorrow to debrief? I've got my eye on Sandra, and I swear she knows everything. The woman once bribed the baker for gossip.
Tomorrow's perfect. And bring more muffins.
Reg added,
Preferably with fewer conspiracy theories baked in.
Not making any promises,
Shannon called as she headed off down the trail, humming to herself. As the sun dipped lower, casting golden streaks across the compound, Mendoza glanced back at the bungalow. The door stood slightly ajar, the forensic team moving like quiet shadows inside.
She had all that money somehow. No one noticed when she vanished.
She was generous but isolated. Probably trusted the wrong person.
Reg crossed his arms.
And now we have a dozen people who might have thought they deserved what she had.
Alex looked toward the garden, where the air smelled faintly of hibiscus.
Let's just hope one of them felt entitled enough to talk about it. Entitlement leaves fingerprints.
Chapter 8. The midday heat wrapped around the island like a wet towel, thick and inescapable. Mendoza stood under the eave of the hidden bungalow, sipping water from a dented steel bottle and watching the humidity blur the horizon. She checked her watch.
I told her noon,
she muttered. Right on cue, Marta rounded the corner, her sensible flats crunching lightly on the gravel path. She wore a pale linen dress and carried a canvas handbag pressed tightly against her side like it might run off if she let go.
You called,
Marta said, her tone wary but steady. Mendoza nodded and held the door open for her.
I need your eyes on something.
The interior of the bungalow still smelled faintly of old lady perfume. Forensics had cleared out for the day, but the soft buzz of a dehumidifier hummed in the corner. Alex and Reg were already there, loitering by a wicker credenza and sipping from iced coconut drinks that Alex swore helped her investigative chi. Bombay lay sprawled near the door, panting lightly, a chewed corner of crime scene tape under his paw. Marta paused just inside, eyes scanning the room. A small, sharp intake of breath gave her away.
Yes,
Mendoza said, following her gaze.
Some of this looks familiar.
Marta nodded slowly.
The vase on the table. Elfriede kept that on the windowsill of her reading nook. And that chair was hers. She had a pair. One broke after she tried to open a beer bottle on its corner.
Reg let out a low whistle.
Spunky.
She was independent,
Marta said, walking farther into the room.
To a fault.
Take your time. We need to know if anything this feels off, missing. Anything that shouldn't be here or should be and isn't.
Marta walked with quiet, deliberate steps. She paused at the bookshelf, tracing a finger along the dusty spines.
Some of her things are definitely here. But this isn't all of it.
How do you mean?
Alex asked.
There's no music box,
Marta said simply. Mendoza tilted her head.
Music box?
It was from her childhood,
Marta said, voice softer now.
Painted wood, with tiny hand-carved dancer inside. She told me it was the one thing she took wherever she went. She kept it in her bedroom, always in the same place. It was old, but she wound it up every day. It played Brahms.
Alex and Reg exchanged a look.
You're sure it wasn't in the villa?
Marta shook her head.
I didn't see it. And it's not here. She wouldn't have given it away and would never agree to leave her house without it. That box meant more to her than anything.
Reg leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed.
Could it have been used to hide something?
Like a will?
Mendoza added. Marta nodded, slowly.
It would be just like her. She didn't trust lawyers. Said they were all sly little clowns in suits.
I've met a few of those.
Reg muttered. Before anyone could respond, the sound of footsteps crunched outside. Then came a familiar voice, sharp, nasal, and unmistakably irritated.
Hello? Officer? We need to discuss the matter of personal property.
Fritz. Mendoza stepped out onto the porch just as Fritz appeared from the footpath, wearing a Hawaiian shirt that looked aggressively designer and a frown that had clearly settled in for the long haul.
There you are.
He huffed, brushing imaginary lint off his sleeve.
I've been looking everywhere. No one told me there was a second unit in Elfrida's name.
That's because it was hidden.
Mendoza said flatly.
We just found out ourselves.
Well,
Fritz sniffed, trying to peek around her shoulder.
I assume there are appraisers on the way.
Mendoza didn't move.
This is an active investigation site. No one touches anything.
Fritz tried to sidestep her.
I'm family. That means I have a right to see.
Touch one thing and I'll personally cuff you to the fence.
Fritz froze, then stepped back with a stiff smile.
Fine. But let's not act like I'm the villain here. My aunt had assets, and now there are even more than we thought. I'm just trying to ensure everything is properly accounted for.
Alex appeared behind Mendoza with a sunny smile.
Where are your relatives, Astrid and Clive?
Fritz rolled his eyes.
On some idiotic sightseeing tour. A pineapple farm, I think. I don't have time for that nonsense.
Oh,
Reg said, emerging beside Alex.
nothing screams family bonding like staring at spiny fruit under a blazing sun.
Bombay trotted forward, tail wagging at the sight of a new potential chew toy. He sat squarely in front of Fritz and gave a bark that somehow sounded judgmental.
Charming,
Fritz said, eyeing the dog like it might start interrogating him.
You said you didn't know about this unit.
Mendoza asked, folding her arms.
Of course not. She never told us. Frankly, I think she was going senile long before anyone admitted it.
His voice was too casual, like someone commenting on the weather, not on a beloved aunt's mental state. Marta, who had been standing quietly near the window, turned to face him.
She was sharp when I met her. Fierce, too. She didn't suffer fools, and she certainly didn't forget things like secret apartments.
Fritz made a show of ignoring her, but his fidgeting betrayed him.
Did you ever visit while Marta was working for her?
Reg asked casually. Fritz sniffed.
She never enjoyed company. Frankly, I was surprised she hired anyone. She wasn't the trusting kind.
That's not true. She trusted the right people. She could tell when someone was kind to her face and cruel to the poor. She hated that.
Alex stepped beside her.
So her hiring process was intense?
Marta nodded.
Very. She grilled me on ethics, philosophy, even asked me what I thought about the nature of wealth.
What did you say?
Reg asked.
I told her I believed in service, not charity, that I came from a good family and chose to be a nurse, not because I had to, but because it was what I was called to do.
And that convinced her?
Marta's smile was small but real.
It was the first time I saw her smile.
Fritz looked impatient.
Yes, how heartwarming. But let's talk facts. What happens to this property now? There's no will, no instructions, and I don't have forever to sit here and wait.
Mendoza gave him a look.
Until we finish the investigation, nothing happens. If there is a will, we'll find it. And if not, well, then the courts will sort it out. Eventually.
Eventually?
Fritz echoed, aghast.
You can't be serious.
Reg clapped him lightly on the back.
Don't worry, champ. You'll have plenty of time to reflect on your aunt's legacy. Maybe go pick up a few coconuts.
Fritz's face turned a shade redder.
This is absurd.
What's absurd is a woman vanishing off the face of the island and no one, not a single relative, checking on her for 4 years.
Fritz opened his mouth, then closed it again. Bombay barked once, loudly, as if to punctuate the silence. Marta glanced at Mendoza.
If the music box is missing, Then someone must have taken it. Even when her mind started slipping, she wound that thing every day without a fault.
Alex's eyes narrowed.
The person who kidnapped poor Elfride took it. They left all the nonsense behind and took only what mattered.
Mendoza nodded.
Either way, we're closing in.
Fritz scowled.
If you'll excuse me, I'll be calling my attorney now.
Do that and tell him to pack sunscreen.
Fritz stomped off, muttering about bureaucracy and coconuts. Marta turned back to the room.
Elfrida had a knack for hiding things around the house, like that key under the planter. Maybe in a moment of sanity she hid the music box too.
We're going to find it.
Reg looked around the room thoughtfully.
Let's just hope no one tossed it into the ocean.
Alex reached down to scratch Bombay's head.
If someone did, I vote we make them dive for it, naked, during jellyfish season.
Now that is a punishment I can get behind.
Marta gave a quiet laugh.
You two are ridiculous.
Occupational hazard.
As they stepped back into the heavy heat outside, Mendoza paused at the door, glancing back into the room where so many shadows still lingered. Chapter 9. The next morning, the sound of Bombay's excited bark preceded Shannon by half a second as she walked briskly up the garden path toward Alex and Reg's shaded patio. She carried a large iced coffee in one hand and a canvas bag bulging with beach towels, sketchbooks, and what looked like a half-eaten papaya in the other.
"Morning, my investigative duo,"
she sang, dropping into a wicker chair.
"You will not believe the chaos I stirred up in art class."
You're the teacher,
Reg said, squinting at her over the rim of his mug.
Aren't you supposed to calm people down?
"Not when there's blood money and a secret Nazi villa involved,"
she replied, pulling out a bright pink notebook covered in star stickers.
"I took notes."
Alex raised an eyebrow.
You took notes on gossip?
"Please, it's qualitative field research."
Bombay rested his head on Shannon's foot, clearly sensing the treats she was bound to produce. She slipped him a dog biscuit from her bag without missing a beat.
So, what did you find out?
Shannon leaned in.
"Everyone agrees on one name, Maritza Peña."
Reg's face tightened slightly.
The lady who lives a few streets down? She told us she used to live in a different unit and pass by Ms. Bauer's villa every day.
Exactly. Apparently she desperately wanted to work for Ms. Bauer. Applied more than once, told out everyone that job was rightfully hers. When Marta got it instead, Maritza said it was a disgrace, claimed she had seniority on the island and knew how to deal with European women.
Alex winced.
That's specific.
Yeah, and one of the other ladies said Maritza even joked, well, half-joked, that she'd have to find another way to get close to the old woman.
Reg sat up straighter.
She said that?
Swear on my gel pens. The quote was, "Gimkoz," and I wrote this down. "If she won't hire me, I'll find my own way into that house. Watch. Creepy, right?"
Alex's brow furrowed.
We've been thinking this was a crime of convenience. Someone who had access and just took advantage when Elfrida got ill. But what if it was planned?
Reg nodded slowly.
Someone who felt entitled, bitter, maybe even angry enough to justify locking her away. And Maritza fits.
Shannon tapped her temple.
There's more. Apparently she told people that Marta didn't deserve the job because she came from some fancy family and wasn't doing it out of need.
Which tracks with what Marta told us. She did say nursing was her calling, that Elfrida only hired people who passed some kind of moral sniff test.
Reg stood, stretching.
We need to talk to Mendoza today.
I'll walk over with you. The bakery was out of mango muffins, so I brought pineapple turnovers instead.
You're spoiling the police,
Alex said, grabbing her sun hat. The four of them sat in the shaded police station veranda, a plate of pineapple turnovers disappearing at a suspicious pace. Mendoza flipped through her notebook, a streak of sunscreen across her cheek, catching the light.
So let me get this straight. Maritza Peña had motive, proximity, and an unhealthy fixation on Ms. Bauer's life?
And possibly her bank account,
Reg added, brushing crumbs off his shorts.
She knew the layout of the villa and resented Marta enough to consider replacing her. By force, maybe.
She could have kept Elfrida hidden in that secret unit.
Alex said, glancing toward the police station door.
All it would take is changing the locks and faking a disappearance.
She might have even been forging communications to the family. The digital trail came from inside the villa. Someone had access to Elfrida's phone and email.
Shannon blew into her iced coffee, eyes wide.
Okay, but if we go knock on her door now, she'll bolt faster than a crab at a bonfire.
Reg nodded.
We need a plan, something subtle. We flush her out, but on our terms.
Mendoza folded her arms.
I would say no, but we're not yet ready for a warrant. We could lure her out of her house and check it while she's gone, if you're willing to help with a little misdirection.
Alex smiled, tapping her sunglasses against her chin.
Always, but let's not lay it out loud just yet, in case someone's listening.
Just then, a blur of movement came around the corner of the station. Lucien appeared, his short limbs flailing as he sprinted toward them, a sweat-soaked ball cap in one hand.
You're not going to believe what I just found.
Reg leaned back.
I don't know, Lucien. After the Nazi gold rumor, the bar's pretty high.
Lucien ignored him, breathless.
I went back to the secret unit, 34D. Something was bugging me about the planter by the sliding doors. The one with the orchid.
Alex straightened.
The one that didn't match the others?
He nodded.
Exactly. I lifted it up and found a small box, one of those clear plastic bakery ones. Inside was this.
He opened his sweaty palm, and there it was, the tiny wooden dancer that obviously belonged in Elfrida's music box. Alex gasped. Mendoza stood.
Was it buried?
More like it was shoved in the soil in a hurry.
Shannon frowned.
Do you think Miss Bauer stuck it there?
Lucien shrugged.
I don't know.
Alex's brow furrowed.
Wait, isn't Maritza growing orchids? I think she's the only one who has them in the whole compound.
Mendoza's expression hardened.
Maybe Ms. Bauer was leaving a sign?
It's not proof, but it's the beginning of a trail.
Mendoza paced a tight circle, then looked up.
All right, this is it. I want to catch her off guard. If she catches wind of this, she'll bury whatever else she's hiding. Reg, Alex, I need your help.
Alex nodded.
What do you need us to do?
Mendoza gave them a tight smile.
We're going to make Maritza come to us. Voluntarily.
Reg leaned back with a grin.
You want a little con, do you? I want her rattled, distracted, off balance enough that she leaves her house without thinking.
And while she's out,
Alex said, catching on,
you'll search her place.
Exactly, but no one else can know. Not Marta, not the neighbors, not even the heirs. And especially not my bosses on mainland. This stays between us.
What's the story?
Shannon asked, already pulling out her bright pink notebook.
You know I love a little flair.
Mendoza held up her hand.
You'll find out tomorrow. For now, just keep being exactly what you are. Casually nosy.
Reg tapped his temple.
That comes naturally.
They stood, the heat of the day thick and expectant. The feeling of momentum shifted, like the mystery had finally started to unravel at the edges. As Mendoza strode toward the station's back office, Bombay trotted after her, tail wagging like he was in on the plan. Alex turned to Reg.
So, what's your role going to be?
He grinned.
Oh, I don't know. A pirate? A scuba instructor? A flamboyant heir?
Alex hooked her arm through his.
Whatever it is, don't lose that Texan accent. It makes people underestimate you.
Reg chuckled.
Oh, darling. People underestimate me all the time.
Chapter 10.
This is either going to be brilliant,
Alex said, swirling honey into her Greek yogurt,
or the kind of thing we'll be explaining to Mendoza for hours.
Reg smirked.
Anything involving my grandfather tends to land in both categories.
They were seated at their little kitchen table, which was rapidly becoming their unofficial command center. A stack of notes, a crumpled villa floor plan, and a photo of Elfrida Bauer sat in front of them. Bombay lay underfoot, blissfully unaware that a fake general was about to become the hottest gossip in the complex.
We just need to bait Maritza into our net. You heard what Shannon said. Maritza was livid about not being hired by Ms. Bauer. She felt entitled, like she'd been cheated out of something she deserved.
She'll jump at the chance to attach herself to another elderly, rich person, especially one with an urgent need for a nurse.
Alex grinned.
Which brings us to our leading man, General Reginald Wyatt O'Malley Sr.
Reg sighed.
He's going to love this.
Does he know?
Texted him this morning. He said, and I quote, "Give 'em hell, boy. Make me sound even crankier than I am." Then he attached a grainy gif of Clint Eastwood holding a shotgun.
Alex snorted.
You weren't kidding. He lives for mischief.
He once faked a limp to get out of a debriefing and spent 3 days at a golf resort before anyone noticed. He is chaos in a beret.
Well, now he's chaos in a beachfront villa.
We don't own a beachfront villa.
No, but he asked us to find one, and he said, and I quote, "Get me something big. I didn't survive 2 wars to live in a shoebox."
Reg leaned back.
He'd also never be caught dead in flip-flops or anything within 400 miles of a daiquiri.
Which is exactly why this works. No one who actually knows the general would believe he's moving here. But Maritza never met him. She'll be too busy picturing mahogany furniture and offshore accounts.
Reg grinned.
And you're sure Shannon's on board?
She's ecstatic. Said she hasn't had this much fun since she faked a French accent for a month in high school to charm a cute exchange student.
By noon, Shannon was in full performance mode. She floated through the compound with a paint-stained tote slung over her shoulder and an expression of hushed importance. In the laundry room, she whispered about how Mr. O'Malley's grandfather is absolutely loaded, but very private. The family's hiring someone by the end of the week. At the pool, she murmured to 2 sunburnt residents that the general was possibly a former CIA asset and had once dated a duchess. In the art studio, she casually mentioned that the general was so tall he can't sleep on a standard bed and was having a custom one flown in, possibly from Dubai. By noon, the entire villa complex buzzed with rumors about the arrival of one General Reginald Wyatt O'Malley Sr., war hero, eccentric billionaire, and, according to one version, personal friend of Kissinger.
He's not.
Reg had muttered over his coffee that morning.
He just told people that once to cut in line at a barbecue.
Alex, in full conspiratorial mode, had added her own spin while shopping at the market.
We're looking for someone with discretion. Grandpa doesn't like to be fussed over.
She'd whispered this to the cashier with the solemnity of someone guarding nuclear codes. By mid-afternoon, 3 people had texted Alex to ask if she was the one interviewing for the billionaire colonel with the yacht. One even offered to help out with diverse currency accounts in Curaçao. Back at their unit, Alex opened the front door to let in the breeze and looked pleased.
It's working. The whole place is vibrating with rich old man needs help energy.
Shannon deserves an Oscar.
Reg said, adjusting the table setup for the interviews.
Or at least a wine gift basket.
Don't worry. I already promised her one.
He raised an eyebrow.
Before or after this backfires?
She smiled.
During.
Inside their modest unit, where Bombay snoozed under a table stacked with bogus resumes, Alex and Reg had rearranged their dining space into an interview zone. A vase of hibiscus blooms sat between them on the table, along with a notebook, a prop clipboard, and a barely used pen. Reg adjusted the wide-brimmed cowboy hat Alex had insisted he wear.
This hat's ridiculous,
he murmured.
It makes you look like a man scouting for staff for a cranky Texan ex-general, which is exactly the look we want.
My grandpa would rather be waterboarded than live in a place with throw-pink stucco walls and a HOA.
He's not actually moving here, but he's definitely helping catch a suspect. So consider it a patriotic hat.
There was a knock at the door. Reg raised an eyebrow.
Place your bets.
Alex checked the clock.
3 minutes early. Gotta be Maritza.
He opened the door with a flourish. Maritza Peña stood there in a pressed white linen outfit, makeup flawless, hair pulled back in a neat bun that screamed professional caretaker. She clutched a leather binder like it contained national secrets.
Mr. O'Malley,
she said, extending a hand.
And you must be Miss Romanoff. We met before. I heard you were taking interviews for the general.
Her voice was syrupy smooth, barely masking the gleam of dollar signs in her eyes.
We are. Please, come in. You're our first.
I like to be early,
Maritza said, stepping inside and immediately scanning the space.
So the general isn't here yet?
No, ma'am.
Reg said, his Texas drawl softened just enough to sound vaguely old money Southern.
Grandpa doesn't do small talk. He wants us to pick someone before he flies in.
Of course. Very efficient.
Maritza sat, folded her hands, and beamed. Reg flipped open the clipboard, which held a shopping lists and a napkin sketch of Bombay in a top hat.
Tell us about your experience.
I was a licensed homemaid in Miami before moving to the island. I cared for stroke patients, arthritis, dementia, you name it. I'm CPR certified, of course. I also cook. Low sodium, keto, soft foods. Basically any diet of my patient's preference.
Do you have experience with military families?
Alex asked sweetly, and sent a thumbs up to the Island Sleuth Squad group chat. Maritza nodded.
My uncle was in the Coast Guard. I understand the structure some people need.
Reg leaned back, adopting a casual air.
Grandpa's a 4-star general. He once tried to replace his IV with a Scotch line.
Maritza gave a forced laugh. Bombay growled at her from under the table.
We're still house hunting for him. He asked us to find something just like the Bauer Villa, something grand. He's a tall man, hates feeling cramped. Said it reminded him of a submarine.
Maritza's smile flickered.
Oh, yes. The long hallway makes it feel like one. I mean, I only saw it from the outside, of course.
Alex leaned in.
It's so odd what happened with Miss Bauer, isn't it?
Maritza dismissed the question.
Yes. Very sad. But let's talk more about the general.
Did you know her personally?
Reg asked.
No, not well,
she said too quickly.
We only spoke in passing. She kept to herself.
Alex exchanged a glance with Reg.
Well,
Alex said, flipping a blank page with purpose.
What would your ideal day with the general look like?
Maritza launched into a prepared speech about schedules, medications, breakfast trays, and personal dignity. But her gaze kept drifting toward a manila folder on the table, strategically marked by Reg Confidential Veterans Affairs. She was clearly dying to know how much the job paid, as Reg launched into a fictional anecdote about Grandpa's aversion to tropical birds. He says parrots are spies with feathers. A soft chime echoed through the apartment. Alex glanced at her phone. A simple message lit the screen. We're out. Alex stood.
We'll be in touch very soon.
Maritza hesitated, then pulled a card from her binder.
Just in case you have questions.
As the door shut behind her, Alex exhaled.
Think Mendoza found anything?
15 minutes later, a soft knock answered the question. Mendoza stepped in, hair pulled back in a tight bun, clipboard in hand.
We searched everything. She has a room full of Ms. Bauer's stuff. Silverware, paintings, jewelry, everything that was valuable.
Why didn't she sell it?
Reg asked.
I'm sure she sold some of it, we'll never know. Probably did it slowly not to raise any red flags. We found a phone hidden in a coffee canister. Guess whose SIM card was inside?
Bauer's?
Alex guessed.
Bingo. We'll need more to convict her of kidnapping, but I can definitely get a warrant for an official search.
Bombay barked once, wagging his tail in agreement. Alex crouched to scratch his ears.
You did good, buddy, not chewing a leg off that mean lady. Next time you get to wear the cowboy hat.
Reg raised a brow.
Don't you dare.
Chapter 11. Maritza Peña's apartment looked like the kind of place where nothing bad ever happened. Fresh curtains, potted orchids on every sill, and a smell of eucalyptus diffusers that gave the illusion of calm. But as Detective Mendoza stood at the door with 2 uniformed officers and a signed search warrant, the illusion didn't stand a chance. Alex and Reg lingered in the hallway, strictly as observers. Mendoza had made it clear. This wasn't a sleuthing stunt anymore. It was official police business.
I still say we're the heart of this operation.
Reg muttered, arms folded.
We're just, letting the officers shine today.
Yes, let them bask in the limelight.
Alex replied under her breath. Mendoza shot them both a warning look over her shoulder.
You two behave, or I'm sending you home with a warning.
The door creaked open. The nurse looked surprised. Mendoza didn't flinch.
Maritza Pena, you are under arrest for kidnapping, elder abuse, theft, obstruction of justice, and unlawful disposal of human remains.
Maritza raised an eyebrow.
That's quite a list. I assume you brought handcuffs.
Several pairs,
Mendoza replied coolly.
Turn around.
She did, without protest. But as Torres stepped forward to cuff her, Maritza looked over her shoulder at the group in the hallway, eyes cold, mouth set in a flat smile.
She was better off with me. I gave her structure. Meals, medicine, peace. That villa was chaos before I arrived. I brought order.
Order?
Alex snapped before she could stop herself.
You imprisoned an elderly woman and stole her life.
Maritza blinked. Not with guilt, but confusion.
She had everything she needed.
Lucien's voice cut in, soft but razor-sharp.
Except freedom.
Maritza turned back, letting Torres secure the cuffs.
You all see monsters because you need them, but I did what none of you had the stomach for. I took responsibility.
Mendoza stepped forward, her voice like stone.
You took a life and destroyed it. That's not responsibility. That's control. And now the courts will decide what you deserve.
As the officers led her past, Maritza didn't struggle. She walked with the same self-assurance she'd shown at community meetings and on her daily strolls past the villa, head high, lips tight. Only now, the illusion was gone. Outside, the waiting patrol car's lights flashed once. Bombay growled low and quiet. Mendoza entered the apartment first, followed by Officer Solano. Bombay wagged his tail once, but stayed dutifully at Alex's side. Lucien joined them at the threshold, unusually quiet. His brow furrowed as he scanned the pristine apartment.
She's tidy, too tidy. Gives me the creeps. I don't trust tidy people.
Reg snorted.
Yeah, it's got that scrub, the guilt off the baseboards vibe.
Alex raised an eyebrow.
Studies show that extreme compulsive tidiness, like actual OCD, doesn't make people violent, but it is still about control. Sometimes people overcompensate their internal chaos by creating sterile surroundings.
Lucian nodded, eyes still fixed on the room.
Exactly. No one lives like this unless they're trying to cover up something dark.
Inside, the apartment was a well-curated shrine to false normalcy. Shelves held gleaming porcelain figurines. The kitchen sparkled. But it only took 10 minutes for the facade to crack.
Detective!
Officer Solano called from the bedroom. Mendoza followed the voice. The rest of them waited, ears straining.
She's got a bag in the back of the closet. And it's not clothes. Looks like silverware, maybe heirlooms. There's a photo, too.
Alex exchanged a glance with Reg. Mendoza reappeared in the hallway holding a heavy, zippered tote. From inside, she pulled a delicate Bavarian teacup, probably 100 years old, a diamond brooch, and a photo of Elfrida Bauer standing in front of a familiar arbor. Mendoza nodded grimly.
This confirms it. These are Ms. Bauer's belongings.
She kept souvenirs? Creepy.
Serial killers do it all the time,
Lucian murmured.
Technically, she didn't kill anyone. She just buried the body. We just found the shovel.
What shovel?
Alex asked. Mendoza gestured to Officer Solano, who walked past them with a mud-caked gardening spade in an evidence bag. Lucian leaned in.
That doesn't look like orchid soil. That's the dirt from under the hibiscus bushes.
Reg whistled low.
All that OCD, and she didn't bother to clean up the shovel.
In the hallway closet, Mendoza found more damning evidence. A plastic file bin labeled GSD Hearts International, complete with a fake nonprofit registration, bank accounts, and promo brochures for a non-existent German Shepherd rescue. Alex stared.
So that's how she kept the money coming, monthly donations to a fake charity.
Mendoza skimmed through the folder.
Fake vet bills, wholesale dog food receipts. Bauer was likely pressured to donate to the rescue, thinking her money went to the dogs in need.
She was using Elfrida's heart against her,
Alex said softly. Lucian, who'd been scanning the living room shelves, suddenly froze.
Wait, over here.
He reached out slowly, almost reverently, and picked up a delicate music box painted with faded blue forget-me-nots. The little ballerina inside was missing.
This has to be it. Same era, same paintwork.
Reg leaned closer, squinting.
You sure? That dancer you found was tiny. This could just be a coincidence.
My French grandma had one just like this,
Lucian said, not taking his eyes off it.
Who do you think insisted on naming me Lucian Augustin Carter? My dad wanted to call me Jake.
Reg chuckled.
Your name suits you all right.
Lucian ignored him, turning the box over gently. He ran a finger along the base, pausing when he felt a faint seam. He pressed. Nothing. Then, with a soft exhale, he tried again, this time sliding instead of pushing. A quiet click. The bottom panel popped open. Inside was a single folded sheet of thick, cream-colored paper, yellowed slightly with age.
Oh.
Lucian breathed. Mendoza was there in a flash, already pulling on gloves.
Let me see it.
Is that?
Reg asked. She unfolded it carefully.
Yes, it's the original will. Dated, signed, notarized.
Alex leaned closer.
Does it name an heir?
Mendoza nodded.
Ms. Bauer appointed the retired island notary as executor.
I guess you'll have to come out of retirement for a day,
Lucian said. Mendoza looked over the will again, lips tight.
She must have hidden it here many years ago and no one knew how to find it. If this is valid, and it looks like it is, then any document Maritza doctored won't stand up in court.
Reg gave a low chuckle.
Lucien, if it wasn't for you, we would never have found it. All the bullion I bet you got for your name finally paid off.
Lucian rolled his eyes at him.
I'll have the legal team validate the document,
Mendoza said, tucking it into an evidence sleeve.
And tomorrow, we'll gather the relatives at the station for a formal reading. Everything will be done by the book.
Bombay gave a sharp bark, as if punctuating the moment. Mendoza gave him a fond glance, then nodded toward the door.
We're done here. The apartment will be sealed. Thank you for standing by and not interfering.
Reg clutched his chest.
Ma'am, I am offended. That implies we ever interfere.
Mendoza raised an eyebrow but didn't respond. As they walked out of the apartment, Lucian carried the music box like it was made out of spun sugar.
You know, despite all the madness, I like this island.
Alex touched his arm.
Don't we all?
Bombay wagged his tail. Chapter 12. The Isla Lirio police station conference room had clearly never hosted a will reading. The fluorescent lights flickered like a nervous habit, and someone had tried to make the mood official with a bowl of hard candies and 2 wilted hibiscus blooms. Fritz Bauer looked about as wilted as the flowers, though his mood was anything but delicate.
I still don't see why you have to gather all those people for this,
he muttered, tugging at his collar.
We all know she left everything to the family.
Across the table, Astrid sat calmly in a linen jumpsuit the color of driftwood, a polished agate pendant swinging softly around her neck.
Shh,
she said with an open palm.
It's an honor to hear Elfrida's final will.
Clive lounged in his seat with his phone out.
Dude, let's just get to the numbers.
Mendoza sat at the head of the table, the original will sealed in a transparent evidence folder. Lucian, arms crossed and quiet, stood near the window. Off to the side, Alex, Reg, and Bombay watched like unofficial ushers to a very awkward one-act play. Mendoza cleared her throat.
This is the legally notarized will of Elfrida Bauer, dated June 3rd, 2015. It was recovered from her music box during our investigation. There is no indication she was under duress or mentally unfit at the time of its signing. In fact, all witnesses listed were longtime acquaintances from the expat community of San Malvino.
Clive finally looked up.
2015? That's like ancient history.
That's the point.
Mendoza said coolly.
This will predate any alleged decline in her mental state. It is legally binding. I'll read it in full.
She opened the will and began.
To whom it may concern, I, Elfrida Bauer, being of sound mind and good health, declare this to be my last will and testament. To my relatives, Fritz Bauer, Astrid Bauer, and Clive Bauer, I send my regards. While we have grown apart over the years, I wish you well in your paths. You shall receive no material inheritance from me, as my estate is already spoken for.
Fritz sat up, indignant.
No inheritance? This is outrageous. She was clearly confused.
Let her finish,
Astrid said firmly. Mendoza didn't blink.
The remainder of my estate, including all investments, valuables, and property, is to be divided as follows. 50% of all liquid assets shall go to fund the construction of the Elfrida Bauer School of Nursing, to be built in partnership with San Malvino's Community Council. 20% shall go to the Community Center Art Program in support of free classes and supplies for residents. 10% to the Turtle Haven Sanctuary to support island conservation efforts. 10% to the local animal shelter, Paws of Grace, for the care and rehoming of abandoned pets. 10% to the San Malvino's Primary Schools Education Fund, supporting scholarships and books.
Mendoza looked up.
She also noted that any proceeds from the future sale of her villa and private unit at Isla Lirio should go directly toward the nursing school endowment. Her note reads, "Those who cared for me deserve to be honored. Let this school be their legacy, not mine."
Mendoza paused, her voice a shade gentler.
It's rare to read a will that feels more like a thank you letter.
There was a long pause. Clive let out a soft breath.
That's actually kind of amazing.
Astrid nodded, eyes glassy.
It's exactly the kind of thing she'd do. She always said that people who help us in our daily lives deserve more than a salary.
Fritz, meanwhile, sputtered like an overheated tea kettle.
She must have been manipulated. This isn't right. A turtle sanctuary? Art supplies? Nurses?
Alex leaned over to Reg.
What did he expect? A private yacht and a gold-plated espresso machine?
Reg chuckled.
He's the kind who thinks compassion's a poor investment.
Lucian spoke quietly, but with steel in his voice.
She chose where her story ends, and she chose well.
Clive rubbed the back of his neck.
Honestly, I'm not mad. I travel light. This is going to do some real good.
Astrid took out a small amethyst stone and placed it in the center of the table.
I'm going to volunteer at the school when it's built, teach mindfulness to the students, maybe start a garden.
Fritz stood abruptly, knocking over his chair.
You're all insane. I'm contesting this.
You're welcome to,
Mendoza said flatly.
But the will was written a decade ago, signed in full health, witnessed and sealed. The music box it was found in had a mechanism untouched for years. Any legal challenge will be a very steep uphill battle.
Fritz growled, gathered his bag, and stormed out in a huff of outrage and overpriced cologne. As the door slammed, Bombay let out a low, satisfied chuff. Mendoza smiled at the dog.
He's got good instincts.
Astrid turned to Lucienne.
How did you know about the music box?
Let's just say I too have elderly European relatives.
Alex looked over at Mendoza.
What happens now?
We'll begin coordinating with the mayor and council. Elfrida Bauer's legacy starts today.
What about Maritza?
Mendoza folded the will closed and slipped it back into its folder before answering.
She was questioned last night,
she said, turning toward Alex and Reg.
Didn't show an ounce of regret, not even a flicker. Said she was the best nurse on the island and that no one else could have done what she did for Ms. Bauer. Like she deserved a medal for holding a woman captive for 4 years.
Alex recoiled.
She actually said that?
Verbatim,
Mendoza said, her jaw tight.
She called it mutually beneficial. Said Marta couldn't have done a good job, so she had to take Elfrida's care in her own hands. Never mind that she forged checks, isolated her from everyone, and kept her hidden away like a prisoner.
Reg let out a low breath.
That's not just delusional. That's pure evil.
She wasn't panicked when Elfrida died.
Mendoza added, her voice dropping.
She was annoyed. Said the timing was inconvenient. Like the death of the woman she'd been exploiting was a scheduling conflict.
Alex pressed a hand to her chest.
How could anyone do that?
She felt entitled. Said if people hadn't overlooked her for the job originally, none of this would have happened. That she only took what was hers.
She's not staying here, I hope,
Reg said, giving Bombay an absent pat as the dog growled low in his throat.
No, she's already on a boat to the mainland. She'll stand trial for kidnapping, elder abuse, obstruction of justice, and theft. And I'll be speaking to the district attorney personally to ensure the full extent of her cruelty doesn't get swept under the rug.
Reg gave a low whistle.
Good.
Long overdue,
Lucian added quietly. A stillness settled over the room, the kind that comes after something rotten is finally pulled into the light. Even the flickering fluorescent bulbs above seemed momentarily stunned. Alex broke the silence with a grim look.
Elfrida must have been so scared, stuck in that hidden unit for years, thinking no one would ever find her.
She left clues,
Lucien said softly.
She had hope, even at the end.
Mendoza nodded.
And that hope is what brought us here.
Chapter 13. The late afternoon sun cast a honey-gold sheen over the sands of Isla Lirio, stretching long shadows across a makeshift circle of folding chairs and woven mats. Near the shoreline, a small driftwood table held a modest urn, a glass of Riesling, and a black-and-white photo of a younger Elfrida Bauer, hair neatly pinned, a half-smile and defiant sparkle in her eyes. A painted sign leaned against the table, courtesy of Shannon's art students. In loving memory of Elfrida Bauer, a grandmother to us all. Astrid stood barefoot in the sand, dressed in flowing white linen with a marigold crown slipping gently over one ear. Beside her, Clive managed beach-appropriate formality with a crisp guayabera, linen slacks, and designer flip-flops that squeaked slightly with each step.
We wanted today to feel like Elfrida,
Astrid said, her voice soft.
Nothing stiff or formal, just sea breeze, flowers, and a little peace.
She'd hate a priest,
Clive added.
but she'd approve of the Riesling.
Laughter rippled through the group. Even Mendoza cracked a smile behind her sunglasses. Alex stood between Reg and Shannon. Bombay sprawled loyally at her feet. Loco, Shannon's perpetually drowsy Labrador, snoozed in the sand nearby. Gary sat off to the side. Polly the parrot perched proudly on his shoulder, muttering something suspiciously like, "Who's got the wine?" Lucien stood apart, hands in his pockets, gazing out at the horizon with a solemn kind of calm. Marta arrived last and quietly took the farthest seat in the circle. Astrid stepped forward with the urn.
My cousin was complex,
she said, her voice carrying across the surf.
Sharp-tongued, stubborn as a goat, but also the kind of person who sewed quilts for shelters and slipped treats to the neighbor's dog when no one was looking.
Gary shifted in his chair, rubbing the back of his neck.
Okay. I've got to say something about the vet discount.
Reg raised an eyebrow.
You mean the island resident special?
Yeah, that one.
Gary exhaled.
It didn't exist. Not from the vet or the compound, anyway. Elfrida set it up herself, years ago. She opened a separate account and told Dr. Reyna to cover any Isla Lirio pets. Pretend it was insurance or a grant, whatever made people feel better.
Alex blinked.
She paid for everyone's vet bills?
Pretty much. Polly's surgery last year, that was her. Doc only told me after the will came out.
Polly fluffed his feathers and chirped,
Nice lady! More crackers!
Reg rubbed his jaw.
She was doing all that behind the scenes, and we never even met her.
Well,
Shannon said, hauling her glitter-splattered art bag closer.
Thanks to her, the community center's going to have enough art supplies to last 2 decades. Canvases, oil paints, whole sets of colored pencils that aren't just nubs. I'm even starting a pottery class.
Alex smiled.
Elfrida really was the gift that kept giving.
Marta, quiet until now, gave a solemn nod.
She was my boss for years. If we open that nursing school in her name, it has to be done right. No shortcuts. She wouldn't stand for that.
Lucien wiped at his eye discreetly.
No one's ever done so much for this island, or asked for so little in return.
A silence fell, warm and full. Then Polly piped up again.
Best lady, more crackers!
Laughter broke the hush.
She'd like that. Good works and good snacks.
Clive took the urn and stepped to the water's edge. The waves lapped at his feet as he lifted it, letting the breeze carry Elfrida into the sea she loved. Ashes shimmered in the golden light, drifting into the tide, folding into the water like she'd never left it at all. A long pause followed, then Bombay barked once, short and clear.
I think that was her saying, all right, enough sentimentality, get a drink and sit down.
She hated a fuss.
Clive agreed. He raised the Riesling, poured a small splash into the sand, and took a sip.
To Elfrida, a woman who did things her own way and never apologized for it.
The circle echoed the toast. To Elfrida. Astrid placed a marigold into the surf. It bobbed once, then drifted out to sea, bright, stubborn, and golden. By the time sunset bathed Isla Lirio in hues of rose and indigo, the group had migrated to Bongo's bar and grill. Lanterns swung gently overhead. Bob Marley convinced women not to cry from the speakers. The air smelled of grilled fish and piña coladas. Alex sipped a cold rum punch while Reg nursed a local beer. Bombay flopped at their feet like a warm, furry puddle. Across the patio, Shannon animatedly described her student's next project, an enormous sea glass mosaic. Lucien, skeptical but clearly entertained, nodded along. At the next table, Mendoza stirred her iced tea with one finger.
If I didn't know better, I'd say you two were settling in,
she said.
We're adaptable,
Alex replied smoothly.
Especially when the dress code's dog-friendly and the tacos are this good.
Reg sighed.
Still can't get Bombay to wear a matching ball cap.
He has boundaries learned from the dog.
Polly the parrot suddenly flapped onto their table, squawking,
Murder! Lies! Margaritas!
Mendoza didn't miss a beat.
Your next book title or just another Friday?
Working title,
Gary said proudly, following behind. From the bar, Astrid and Clive clinked glasses. Word had just come through. The funds from the villa and hidden unit had been transferred, earmarked for building the Elfrida Bauer Nursing School on San Malvino. Clive offered to help fund scholarships. Astrid insisted the building would feature a rooftop herb garden and spiritual treatment rooms. No one asked for clarification.
They're good people,
Shannon said, watching them.
Elfrida must have seen that, even if Fritz didn't.
Fritz is off the island, filed a probate complaint. It was promptly ignored.
Poetic justice,
Lucien murmured. Reg raised his beer.
So what's next for you, detective?
Mendoza shrugged.
Maybe I'll finally finish a crossword without a body showing up halfway through.
Dream big,
Alex said, clinking glasses with her. A waitress approached with a tray of drinks.
Compliments of the house, Lucien insisted, said it's a tradition in France, drinks after scattering ashes.
Lucien gave a small shrug.
Only if the deceased was truly unforgettable.
Then we should probably order a second round, Reg said. Elfrida earned it. They raised their glasses again.
To Elfrida Bauer, who lived with intention, vanished with mystery, and left this island better than she found it.
To Elfrida.
Bombay barked once. Loco gave a sleepy tail thump. Polly cackled from Gary's shoulder.
Case closed!
This has been Death by Hibiscus Bush, Book 2 in the Island Whodunnit series. Written by Tess Marlowe. Narration produced and directed by Maureen Gazarian. Audio created using 11 Labs multi-voice